You just only have to Google my name to see I've struggled with mental health. I've had my fair share of protesters and critics, but that and some of it fair, some of it a little bit over the top. But it's been a journey.
Hey everyone, Vincenzo Calla here with VCalla Productions, and today I'm sitting with Lisa MacLeod, the MPP for my riding of Nepean. It's great to be here, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for having me in your kitchen, and it's great to have you here today.
Well, it's always great to see you, Vincenzo. We're so proud of you here in Nepean, and we've been watching you bring stories for politicians all over the country to Canadians, and you're doing it from right here at home. And I know I speak for your mom and dad too, because they're very proud of you. It's always nice to run into them as well.
Well, it's great to be here. I've done, like you were saying, I've done interviews from all across the country, municipal, provincially, and federally, but back here, right here, in my roots in Nepean. So it's great to be here for Let's Discuss Politics, and we'll get started with the first segment, which is called Lisa's Story, Your Story, where we'll talk a bit about yourself, your story, and how you came to be in politics. So first off, I want you to explain, maybe talk a bit about yourself and your story and how you started in politics and how you've got to this point now.
Yeah, well, you know what? I started in politics at a very young age, even a little bit younger than you. And it was because my father was elected for close to 3 decades when he passed away in 2007. Prior to that, my cousin, my father's first cousin, was Premier of Nova Scotia. So the first leadership I ever worked on was him when I was 15 or 16 years old. And then before that, my great uncle and their uncle served in cabinet under Robert Stanfield in Nova Scotia. So to me, public service was always the forebearer of what a person should do in a community. And I didn't really expect when I moved to Ontario from Nova Scotia, particularly to Ottawa, that I would not. I figured I would pursue a career in politics, maybe work on the Hill, which I did. But I didn't know that I would probably find myself elected. And so it was a real pleasant surprise when I told Joe, when Victoria was just 3 months old, that I was going to replace John Baird. And so full disclosure, I was Pierre Poilievre's campaign manager in 2004, I deputy in 2006, and I worked in his office as the EA. I worked for our former local city councillor, Jan Harder, who served for 25 years as her EA, and ran one of her campaigns with some of the local folks, and also served with John Baird. So it really wasn't new other than being on the other side. And obviously it was tough because I had an infant. And with Victoria just being months old, traveling back and forth to Toronto at the legislature meant I was going to have to stand up for women in politics. And so I did. And so my early days in my career were sort of formulated around my commitment to not just trailblazing, but widening the trail for young women in politics who may want to pursue a career in elected life and making it easier for them and their family. And so I actually got a national award for that from Equal Voice.
So I just want to talk a bit about now that decision you made back in 2006 to run. There was a by-election in this riding. I was 2 years old, or just less than 2 years old, just over a year old.
So you couldn't vote for me?
I didn't remember.
But you would have if you could have.
I don't really remember it. But why did you decide in 2006 that was the right time to get involved? And why did you decide that it was the right time, right level of government, and Victoria was very young? Why did you decide, even as a young mother, that it was time, that was the time to run?
Sometimes I ask myself that same question, but then I always go back to how I really felt. At the time, John Baird was trying to recruit my husband, Joe, to be the candidate. And Joe was working in the Senate at the time. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I had a feeling, it's a strange thing. It's like I had a dream that, I was going to do this. I would be acclaimed and I would go on to be an MPP. And I remember thinking to myself, if I can tell Joe this, then I'm doing it. Because it does take a lot of courage to say you're going to run for office and then actually put your name on a ballot and then continue on to make a career in supporting your community, because you do get a lot of, unsolicited comments from people. And so I remember clear as day, it was a Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock, baby in the car seat. One of my pets at the time. Aberdeen, she was a sweet little thing. We got her during Pierre Poilievre's first campaign. And I remember looking at Joe right in front of the Supreme Court of Canada and saying, I'm going to run to replace John Baird, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then he laughed and he supported me. And from that moment forward, we have served our community, and we have been very proud to represent not only Nepean but also Carleton at times, and the broader city of Ottawa throughout that experience. So it's been an amazing journey, but it's had its ups and downs too, right? I mean, you just only have to Google my name to see I've struggled with mental health. I've had my fair share of protesters and critics, but that and some of it fair, some of it a little bit over the top. But it's been a journey.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this now in this segment, which is called Serving as an Elected Official. We'll talk a bit about these 18 years since that first election. You've been elected for 18 years, the longest serving, the longest serving MPPs in the Ottawa region, one of the longest serving elected officials in the Ottawa region. There's a few more, but you're one of them. And I guess I want to start off with what has been your favorite part about serving locally? The members of Nepean, and for many years you were serving Nepean Carleton. So the people of our greater Ottawa community as well, and just all of us.
I think that one of the things has been being able to affect change, and it doesn't always have to be legislation. Sometimes it is working to solve someone's problem. I've worked extensively with parents who've lost children on a variety of different issues, and really have gained a great deal of knowledge and understanding from them, and Rowan's Law being a prime example of what a tragedy can do in our community to support the overall safety and betterment for young people. I think working and just being able to convene a table of people to say, okay, food cupboard is at a critically low mass. How do we as a community come together and do that? And that could be the Barhaven Food Cupboard. It could be FAMSAC and Bell's Corners. I think about the work I'm doing with women and across the political spectrum in the city of Ottawa, and trying to find a path forward for mentorship as politics becomes more difficult. It's less and less appealing for young women who, quite honestly, don't really deserve a lot of the criticism that they get. And so it's been part of that, a part of the journey of me being a parent, seeing firsthand what I saw in the school system to bring that to ministers of education has been important for me. And I'll say this, and I'll conclude on this one, but being the minister responsible for heritage tourism, sport, and culture during the pandemic, they were the hardest hit sectors, was very tough, but also probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, because at that point we were all in it together, and trying to lift them up, support them, and find a path forward was my goal. And I think I achieved the goal to the best of my ability, given the circumstances and the funding levels. But it's been a really rewarding experience for me on the whole.
And I want to ask a little follow-up to that. So for many years, you were on the opposition benches. And in 2018, when the PCs and Premier Ford came to power, you went over onto the government benches and served as a minister. So what was that like, serving as an advocate for Ottawa on the opposition benches for so many years and transferring over to the government side? And even now, even though you're not a minister right now, you're still serving our city on the PC side of the house.
Well, I can call the premier and get an answer. And is the case of like the housing issue back in March or April, was able to get results within a day just by calling him and saying, hey, Ottawa needs its fair share. And he's like, yes, of course. No, he's been wonderful to me throughout my illness, and making sure that I still am able to participate in a very influential level in the caucus. And so that was great, but it was a lot of fun. I worked for 15 years, I think, or 13 years in opposition. The first couple of years was a lot of fun because I was brand new and I was still very young. I was still in my early 30s. By the time we got into the the minority parliament between 2011 and 2014, I was a real senior member of the opposition under Tim Hudak, and so I had a lot of responsibility, and it was really an exciting time to be in a minority parliament. I think it was hard between 2014 and 2018 when the Liberals were returned with a majority. And that was when I first had my bout of depression. And then to be, appointed to cabinet in big portfolios throughout the first 4 years of our government was incredible. And, some of the highlights obviously are speaking to the United Nations on sex trafficking, or going to Los Angeles and touting our film and television community, and then obviously traveling across the province as tourism minister just to see how great the province was. So it was really a great eye-opener, and it was incredibly important to learn the other side of politics. It is not easy to govern, but it's not easy to be in opposition either. They both have their benefits, and they both have their challenges.
So now I want to talk a bit. You sort of already answered this before in some of the achievements you've talked about, but if you could name me the biggest achievement that you're the most proud of over the past 18 years, what is one of your biggest achievements that you're very, very proud of?
Well, I think obviously it is Rowan's Law for sure, because that is going to help save young people's lives. I think that, but I think continually being able to serve and to deliver for our constituency. I've been able to build more schools than all other MPPs combined because of two reasons. One is of my longevity as a member. The second is obviously because we are a high growth area. So it's really good to see those new schools. It's great to see like the Strandherd Armstrong Bridge, and to know that I was able to secure a third funding for that. It's just really when you're driving by things and you go, wow, I had a hand in that. And it makes you feel like you have succeeded in what you set out to do. And in my case, that is to serve our community in Barrhaven and Bell's Corners and Trent Arlington and Craig Henry and other communities in Nepean.
So now we're going to continue on that. It's called The World of Politics Around Us, where we'll talk a bit about this world of politics that surrounds us and the world of politics that has surrounded you. So first off, I wanted to ask you who have been some politicians that have inspired you as an MPP over the years?
Yeah, so obviously my dad, because he taught me retail politics. He taught me how to organize. He taught me how to lead with compassion and integrity first and foremost, and to get the job done. And second, I would say, would be Joe Clark. My mother always called him the best prime minister there never was. And I had the opportunity to work for Mr. Clark, and to get to see him on a daily basis with oodles of integrity. I loved Stephen Harper. I enjoyed working for his government briefly before I got elected. So to me, that was really important. Around the world, obviously, Margaret Thatcher being the Iron Lady, she was somebody that was able to move forward. Gender didn't matter. She had a strong conservative agenda. And my favorite, and everyone's going to laugh at me when I say this, but it is George W. Bush. I've loved George W. Bush since he was first president. And then I met him a few years ago after I was first elected, and I got to see him, and I said, "I love you." And he laughed and he kissed me on the cheek. And I said, "Did anybody get that?" and the photographer didn't get it, but Tim Hudak saw it, and so did Todd Smith. So, it happened.
There are people there that can attest.
It happened. But I did actually get to meet two United States presidents. I've met every current prime minister that's alive. I've met every single one of them, but I have met two presidents of the United States. So obviously George W. Bush, but also, oh my goodness, his name's eluding me. And
let's run
Carter.
Through them. Carter.
Yeah. Well, he's quite elderly now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Jimmy Carter, we went to his presidential library and met him there.
Wow. That's some great political figures there, past and present, that have really, changed the world. A lot of them have changed the world, and in sort of the different things that we've seen, and some of the concepts are still around, and that sort of can be a testament to the impact, long-term impact, what one person in politics can do. And I guess I want to, on that note, talk about some of the things that you're going to keep working on going forward. So what are some of the issues that you think that you'd like to keep working on for the next few years, the next little while, as the MPP for Nepean?
So affordability is going to be really important. That means affordability of housing, affordability for groceries, gasoline, your energy and utility bills. And so I think I want to continue to be a voice for people who are struggling right now, and I know many are. And I know housing starts are things that we're trying to really encourage in the province so that we can make home ownership more affordable. It's never been more out of reach, and so that's an area. But that, of course, will be led by the Ministry of Finance and the Premier's office. One area where I think I would really like to make a mark, well, two areas. The first, which is something we already discussed, which is the safety of politicians when it comes to threats, which are increasing now as never before, and making sure that the mental health and well-being of politicians at all levels of government is recognized and supported. So how we do that, I've got some ideas, but we're fleshing that out. The second area, and I think this is something that should have come after the pandemic, but it's something we need to look at in a long-term basis, is many of our community groups and our volunteers are suffering. And it's organizations see less donations than they've seen before, and they're seeing less volunteers. And so how do we have a call to action in Ontario so that those who can donate do and are incentivized to do such? And how do we have the call to action to ensure that people are still volunteering? Because we do start to see in our communities and in other organizations, it typically is the same people that continue to support things, and we have dwindling numbers in important community organizations. And so I think that's an opportunity for our province to be a world leader. And it's also a place that I personally think that we can benefit in our community.
So that's all I have for questions today. Thanks for joining me. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we end off on this interview today?
No, I think that this has been a real pleasure, as I started off saying, to have you here in my home with my family and my team, and watching you grow has been absolutely incredible. And it's been fun to be interviewed by you. It's been fun to watch your episodes, and I'm looking forward to seeing what VCalla does next.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It was fantastic to have you. And I guess if you like this interview, make sure to go check out the next interview with Lisa on YouTube this Friday for Top 10. You're not going to want to miss this one, so make sure to go join us there. So
what are you talking about?
it's gonna be fun. So let's discuss politics as a VCalla production. Until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.